Have you ever felt surrounded yet unseen? Have you walked into a room full of people, smiling, laughing, connecting, only to feel like a stranger standing in the center of it all? This isn't loneliness. It's something deeper, a quiet difference, an invisible thread that sets you apart, not in a broken way, but in a way that is profound, powerful, and full of potential. What if that feeling, the one that tells you you don't belong, wasn't a weakness to overcome, but a gift waiting to be understood?
Chapter 1. When you were never meant to fit in.
In a world obsessed with belonging, there's an unspoken belief that being part of the group means you're okay, that acceptance equals success, that connection only counts when it's collective. But what if you've never really cared about fitting in? What if group activities drain you, small talk bores you, and trying to be one of them feels like a performance you never auditioned for? Many people feel this, yet they don't have the words for it. They're not shy, they're not introverted, they're not broken. They're simply facing life from a different direction. There is a name for this. Not introvert, not extrovert, but Otrovert. Someone who, at their core, faces a different direction than the group. While the world moves inward or outward in sync, the Otrovert is quietly, courageously looking elsewhere, outward from the group, yet deeply inward toward truth. Otroverts can be charismatic, sociable, successful. They're not socially anxious or emotionally unavailable. In fact, they often feel too much. They connect deeply, just not with groups. Their place is not in the crowd. It's in the quiet, in meaningful one-on-one moments, in purpose, not performance. At its core, being an Otrovert means you don't carry the communal impulse. You're not built to thrive in the hive. You don't instinctively seek the comfort of crowds or the validation of the many. You're the person who leaves the party early, not because you're rude, but because it feels like your energy is leaking out with every superficial exchange. You'd rather take a long walk alone or talk for hours with one close friend than spend 10 minutes working the room. You skip the group trip and take a solo journey instead. You avoid group sports and love hiking alone. You dread camp, team-building exercises, and holiday parties, not because you're antisocial, but because you're not wired for collective enthusiasm. You are the one who finds solitude not lonely, but liberating. And here's the paradox. You might be popular, liked, even admired. You might smile, joke, laugh, and carry conversations with ease. But deep down, you feel apart, like you're playing a role written by someone else. Like everyone else got the script, and you're improvising in silence. You're the observer in a room of participants, the lone note in a chorus of harmony. But you're not less than. You're not missing something. You are simply built to stand apart and to stand tall. Because while the group seeks sameness, the Otrovert sees uniqueness. While others blend in, you notice what others overlook. You're not part of the dance, but you understand the rhythm in a way no one else does. This isn't a flaw. It's not a phase. It's a perspective, a strength, a gift. Being an Otrovert doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means connecting to it on your own terms, through your own lens, with a heart that sees people, not crowds. It's time to stop performing and start belonging to yourself.
Chapter 2. Why no one really gets you. You've probably heard it before. You're just shy. You must be an introvert. Maybe you have social anxiety. Why don't you just join in? People around you try to make sense of your quiet distance. They wrap labels around you, trying to pull you into a familiar box. But none of them fit. You're not hiding. You're not scared. You're not broken. You simply don't belong where others assume you should. Because being an Otrovert doesn't look like anything. It isn't visible. You might laugh easily, lead teams, give presentations, or charm a room. But inside, you feel detached, as if everyone is dancing to music you can't hear. And no matter how close you stand to the crowd, you always feel a step away. This confuses others, and sometimes even you. You're not introverted. You're not afraid of people. In fact, you're deeply attuned to them. You notice their energy, feel their moods, read between their words. But this sensitivity isn't a desire to join. It's a desire to understand, to connect on a level the group rarely reaches. You're not a non-conformist looking to rebel. You're not trying to be different. You simply are. While others crave common ground, you seek solid truth. While they say, "We all know," you quietly ask, "Do we?" Even anxiety doesn't explain it. You're not panicking in crowds. You're just watching, wishing you were anywhere else. Not because you fear people, but because your soul isn't fed by surface connection. And no, you're not neurodivergent. You're not socially impaired. You don't struggle to follow the rules. You just question why they exist in the first place. The truth is, you're misunderstood because most people measure connection by how well you blend in. But your deepest strength lies in how beautifully you stand apart.
Chapter 3. The Quiet Power of Not Playing Along.
You're not loud about your resistance. You don't wave flags or shout in protest, but inside, you're a quiet revolutionary, a gentle rebel, someone who refuses to conform, not out of anger, but out of honesty. You follow rules, yes, but only because you've learned how to move through the world without creating friction. You know how to smile, nod, and navigate expectations, but inside, you're questioning everything. You've never really believed in the ceremonies, the milestones, the big days, birthdays, graduations, reunions. They feel empty unless they're personal, meaningful, real. While others find joy in traditions, you build your own rituals, ones that nourish your spirit. You don't seek adrenaline or adventure, you seek peace, clarity, autonomy. You crave structure, not for control, but for protection. Because your freedom doesn't live in chaos, it lives in quiet certainty. It lives in knowing that you are enough, without applause, without permission. Even your rebellion is private. You don't need the world to agree with you. You just need to live by your own truth. That's the quiet power of the meek rebel. Strength without spectacle. Authenticity without the need for attention.
Chapter 4. The Performer Behind the Smile. You've played the part before, haven't you? The one who jokes at the party, the one who tells stories, the one who fits in just enough to avoid the questions. You laugh, you mingle, but the whole time you're waiting to go home. Because for you, the performance is exhausting. You're not afraid of people. You're not socially anxious. You're simply pretending. Just enough to be seen, but not truly known.
This is the mask of the pseudo-extrovert. You know how to be the center of attention when needed. You've led meetings, hosted events, given speeches, and sometimes even enjoyed it. But the moment the spotlight fades, you disappear into silence, into stillness, into yourself. You don't crave connection with the many. You crave depth with the few. And more often than not, you crave your own company most of all. The real you isn't loud. The real you isn't flashy. The real you is thoughtful, intentional, private. And with time, you've learned something powerful. You don't have to keep performing. You don't have to keep playing the role just to be accepted. You can step off the stage and still be whole. You can say no to the crowd and yes to yourself. Chapter 5. Creating in a World That Doesn't See You. True creativity doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from solitude, from silence, from deep wells within a person who sees the world just a little differently. You are that person, not because you set out to be different, but because you couldn't be anything else. While others look to the group for inspiration, you look within. You question the norms, ignore the trends, and listen to a voice that only you can hear. You're not trying to be the best. You're trying to be honest. You're not trying to be admired. You're trying to express. And in doing so, you create things no one else could have imagined. Not because you're louder, but because you're real. True creativity is the power to invent, to see the unseen, to bring form to feeling. And that power often lives in those who never quite belonged. Because when you don't fit into the world, you begin to shape a new one. You write, you paint, you build, you design, not for the masses, but for the meaning. And even if your art is never praised, you know it's yours. That's what matters. Your gift isn't just what you create. It's how you see, how you think, how you dare to step away from the known and into the new. Chapter 6. Feeling Everything All the Time.
There is a reason you're tired after socializing. It's not because you're antisocial. It's because you feel too much. You walk into a room and sense the energy instantly. You notice the shift in tone, the glance, the hesitation, the forced laugh. While others talk, you listen, not just to words, but to what's underneath them. You feel it all, the sorrow behind the smile, the frustration hidden behind silence, the joy that someone can't express. You carry it, even if it's not yours. That's the gift and the challenge of being an empath. It's why small talk feels empty, why crowds feel overwhelming, why you crave authenticity like oxygen. You're not avoiding people, you're just selective with your energy. Because connection, for you, isn't a social activity, it's a sacred exchange. You don't need to belong to the group to care about people. In fact, your deepest compassion comes from standing just outside the circle, seeing others more clearly than they can see themselves. And while the world rushes to speak, you bring the rare gift of presence.
Chapter 7. Before the World Told You Who to Be. Think back to when you were a child. Before the pressure to join, before the noise of conformity, before you learned the rules of fitting in. You were whole. You didn't need a crowd to feel okay. You followed curiosity, not consensus. You played by your own rules. You spoke when it mattered. You listened with wonder. You were connected, deeply, but on your terms. We are all born with this capacity, a purity of presence,
an individuality untouched by social expectations. But then, slowly, the world teaches us to join the group, to join the system, to join the noise. And in doing so, many lose their natural direction. But some don't. Some resist, quietly, naturally, not out of defiance, but out of alignment. Those people, we call them outsiders, but in truth, they are originals. They are those who held on to something the rest forgot, the right to be themselves, unshaped by the herd. Maybe that's you. Maybe what others call non-conformity is just you remembering who you've always been.
Chapter 8. Belonging is the prize, but for who? The world doesn't always value what's real. It rewards what's familiar, what's visible, what follows the script. It praises the team player, the life of the party, the loudest voice in the room. We live in a culture built for joiners, those who align, subscribe, participate. From schools to companies to social groups, the message is clear. If you want to be valued, you have to belong. But what happens when you don't? When you question instead of comply? When you create instead of copy? When you choose solitude over spectacle? You're told to just be more social, to get with the program, to put yourself out there. But maybe the program was never made for you. Maybe your power doesn't live in joining. It lives in discerning, choosing, observing, thinking for yourself. Yes, the world may reward those who blend in, but history remembers those who dared not to.
Chapter 9. The Dangerous Illusion of Fitting In. Here's the great illusion, that if you can just fit in, everything will feel right. But fitting in is often just a mask, a shape we twist ourselves into for acceptance. And the more we wear it, the more we lose sight of who we really are. Because fitting in isn't the same as belonging. Fitting in says, I'll change so you'll let me stay. Belonging says, I'll be myself and trust you'll meet me there. For the Otrovert, fitting in is exhausting. The constant effort to mirror the group, to match the tone, to smile when you don't mean it, it drains the spirit. You start asking, is there something wrong with me? When the real question is, why am I trying to become someone else, just to be seen? The truth is this: if the only way to be accepted is to abandon yourself, it's not acceptance, it's performance. And you were never meant to perform. You were meant to live fully, freely, and truthfully. You don't need to fit in. You need to fit yourself. Chapter 10. The Superpower of Needing No One's Approval.
Now here's the turning point. When you stop trying to belong and instead begin to stand on your own, something shifts. You start to feel a kind of calm most people never know. You begin to realize you don't need constant validation. You don't need the group's approval to feel whole. You don't need to share every thought to know it's real. This is emotional self-sufficiency. It's the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, even if no one else does. It's the ability to sit with your thoughts and feel nourished, not restless. It's the freedom to be alone and never feel lonely. Others may chase popularity, applause, inclusion, but you have something rarer. You have peace. You've stopped outsourcing your worth. You've stopped tying your joy to others' opinions. And in doing so, you've reclaimed your freedom. Because when you no longer need the group to feel okay,
You become unshakable.
Chapter 11. Deep connection without the noise.
True connection doesn't come from being in the same room. It comes from being seen, heard, understood. And you, with your quiet presence and careful words, connect in ways most never will. You don't need a crowd to feel close. You need depth. And you give that to others, not because you want something in return, but because you care. You notice what others miss, the hesitation in a voice, the silent emotion behind a nod. You reach into those spaces and offer something powerful, empathy, not performance. You don't rush connection. You don't fake it. And because of that, when someone earns your trust, it means everything. You don't love lightly. You love with your whole being. While the world seeks fast friendships and social currency, you build something different, intimate bonds, rich in substance, one conversation at a time, one moment of truth at a time. And it's not just connection you bring, it's comfort. You are the one others turn to when they're tired of pretending. You are the safe place, the quiet truth. Because when you no longer need to belong everywhere, you become a space where others can belong authentically.
Chapter 12. Confidence that doesn't need to be loud.
Here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to be like everyone else, you begin to discover your real strength. The world will try to define you, shape you, tell you who you should be. But when you break free from that noise, something powerful rises. Confidence. Not the loud kind that shouts over others, but the quiet kind that stands tall in silence. You no longer chase the crowd. You walk your path. You don't need to be the most popular, the most followed, or the most included. You need to be true. And that truth brings you something rare in today's world: contentment. You wake up and know that you are enough. You sit with your thoughts and find peace. You stop measuring your life by likes, invitations, or applause, and start measuring it by joy, clarity, and meaning. This is what happens when you embrace your nature. You begin to live, not for attention, not for approval, but for purpose. You're not here to fit in. You're here to be free.
Chapter 13. What if everyone else is wrong?
The crowd moves as one. It follows trends. It clings to consensus. It looks sideways before speaking to be sure it's still safe to think. But you were never part of that hive. You ask different questions. You see different patterns. While others say, "This is how it's done," you whisper, "But what if we tried it another way?" This isn't rebellion. This is vision. Your mind isn't bound by the group's rhythm, and that's what makes it dangerous, in the best way. Because it opens doors no one else saw. It breaks rules no one realized were optional. It builds what the world didn't know it needed. When others are content with answers, you go searching for the real ones. And even when you're misunderstood or dismissed, you keep asking, thinking, creating. Because you don't think for the group. You think beyond it. And that's how change begins. Progress doesn't come from conformity. It comes from those willing to question what everyone else has accepted. And that person is you.
Chapter 14. The rich world inside your silence.
While others seek stimulation from outside, you find it within. You can sit in silence for hours and never feel alone, because your mind is full of wonder. Your thoughts are not distractions, they're companions. Your imagination isn't an escape, it's a home. The world may never fully understand this. They'll ask why you're so quiet, why you don't always join the fun, why you're content staying in when everyone's out. But you know the truth. You are not missing out. You're tuning in. There's a garden inside you, lush, wild, alive. A world where you explore meaning, revisit memories, shape new ideas, and find clarity that no crowd could ever give you. You don't need more noise. You need more stillness. Because in that stillness, you grow, you heal, you become. This is the gift of not belonging, the space to belong to yourself. When the world feels chaotic, you return home, not to a place, but to you. And in that inner world, you find everything you need.
Chapter 15. The Child Who Didn't Want to Play Along. It often starts early. The child who doesn't want to go to camp. The one who enjoys playing alone, even when friends are around. The one who's quiet in a crowd, but thoughtful when it's just the two of you. They're not sad. They're not shy. They're simply wired differently. They observe instead of join. They listen deeply. They wonder quietly. And while the world rushes to get them involved, what they truly need is space. Space to grow at their own pace, in their own way. But here's the problem. Society doesn't like stillness in children. It labels it. It tries to fix it. Why won't you play with the others? Why are you so quiet? Come on, you should be more like the rest. But this child doesn't want to be like the rest, not because they think they're better, but because they know they're different. The gift of the ultrovert child is depth, wisdom beyond their years, empathy that surprises adults, and a rich, rich inner world. What they need isn't fixing. What they need is understanding. When a child is allowed to be who they are, without shame or pressure to conform, they bloom, not into what the world expects, but into the person they were always meant to be. Chapter 16. Why High School Never Made Sense. Adolescence is loud, crowded, demanding. It's a time when the pressure to belong reaches its peak, and for the Otrovert, it can feel like survival. Everyone around you is forming groups, joining clubs, chasing attention, mimicking trends. And you're wondering why none of it feels right. You try to join in because you don't want to be left out, but the more you blend in, the more lost you feel. You laugh at the jokes you don't find funny. You dress like the group, talk like the group, even pretend to care about what the group cares about. But inside, you're exhausted. You're disconnected. You're wondering, why can't I just be like them? Because you're not meant to be. This stage is difficult for every Otrovert, but it's also where you start to realize your discomfort isn't a flaw, it's a signal, a reminder that your path is different. And when you begin to follow that path, when you stop seeking the crowd's approval and start listening to your own voice, you begin to grow into your truth. Adolescence tests you, but on the other side, there's clarity. Chapter 17. Loving Without Losing Yourself. Love is a mirror, and for Otroverts, it's where the real test of belonging begins. You don't need a sea of friends, but you do long for one soul who sees you, really sees you. You're not interested in playing the field or performing the roles that romance often demands. You crave honesty, depth, solitude shared with someone who respects your quiet. In relationships, you're not needy, but you're loyal. You don't love loudly, but you love fully. You value emotional connection over constant presence.
And when someone earns your trust, you offer them something rare, a bond that doesn't fade with trends or time. But here's the truth. Being in a relationship as an Otrovert can be complicated. You may feel smothered by too much closeness. You may need space others don't understand. You may find yourself pulling back, not because you don't care, but because you care deeply and need room to breathe. The key is to choose partners who honor your rhythm, who don't take your silence personally, who see your need for solitude not as distance, but as integrity. Because for Otroverts, love isn't about constant togetherness. It's about being fully yourself beside someone who does the same. That's not isolation. That's intimacy.
Chapter 18. You don't have to be loud to lead.
In the workplace, the world rewards extroversion. Team players, group brainstormers, social charmers. But what about the deep thinkers, the quiet creators, the ones who aren't the loudest in the room but often the wisest? Otroverts bring a different energy to their work. They don't dominate meetings, but they listen carefully, and when they speak, it matters. They don't chase attention, but they get results. They may avoid office politics, but they lead with integrity. You won't find them working the room, but give them a problem to solve and they'll see angles no one else does. They work best alone or in small collaborations. They crave clarity, autonomy, purpose. And when allowed to thrive on their own terms, they often outperform expectations. But in many environments, they're misunderstood, passed over for promotions, misjudged as disengaged. Not because they lack talent, but because the system wasn't built with them in mind. The solution? Don't shrink to fit the space. Redesign your path. Whether you lead your own venture, work behind the scenes, or quietly build something extraordinary, your contribution is no less powerful just because it's less visible. You don't need to be loud to lead. You don't need to be social to succeed. You just need to stay aligned with your strengths. Chapter 19. A life that ends in peace, not regret. As the years pass, something surprising happens. The pressure to belong starts to fade. You stop caring what others think. You let go of social obligations that once weighed you down. And slowly, almost quietly, you begin to return to yourself. For the Otrovert, aging is not a loss. It's a homecoming. The need to perform, to participate, to fit in, finally disappears, and what remains is truth, stillness, peace. You no longer feel guilty for craving solitude. You no longer apologize for your quiet. You begin to live entirely by your own compass. And when the end approaches, you're not afraid. Because you've lived close to the edge all along, not in a reckless way, but in a real one. You've faced silence. You've faced stillness. You've made peace with your own company. You've built a life not based on the approval of others, but on meaning. And that, in the end, is the greatest legacy of all. Conclusion. You've spent so long wondering what's wrong with you, why the crowd never felt right, why the group's laughter never reached your heart, why you always felt like a guest in places where others felt at home. But now you know. There was never anything wrong with you. You were simply not made to join. You were made to see, to feel, to think, to walk your own road. You are not here to follow the map everyone else is using. You're here to chart your own. The world will keep telling you to fit in, to play along, to blend. But every time you shrink to be accepted, you lose a piece of yourself. And today, that ends. Because the gift of not belonging is freedom. Freedom to say no. Freedom to walk away. Freedom to think differently. Freedom to create without permission. Freedom to connect without pretending. Freedom to live without performance. It is not your job to make others comfortable with your truth. It is not your purpose to fit inside a mold someone else built. Your only task is to be you, fully, honestly, unapologetically. And the moment you stop waiting to belong somewhere is the moment you finally belong to yourself. Let the world spin as it will. Let the noise rise. Let the crowd move in circles. You move forward. Quiet, clear, unstoppable. Because once you realize the power of being who you are, you stop asking for a seat at their table and start building your own.